Hi everyone, this is Nikki Jameson here, and today we are in Corel Painter, and I'm going to look at a brush group called alcohol ink. So on the brush here is called ribbon pour, and I think I'll go for let's try a brighter colour. It's called ribbon pour, and the reason I'm starting with this brush is because this actually puts down some paint. Okay, so you can this brush moves quite well across your canvas. I'm going to reset it. It does come up quite small. So we put down this one called ribbon pour, and then we'll go back to the top and we'll go to this one called bulge. So if I reset bulge, it comes up a fairly large brush, and what bulge does is that it acts on the actual paint. It doesn't actually put paint down, it actually acts on the paint. So you can see it's bulging this paint out, making this, bulge perspective here. Okay, so that's very interesting. That's bulge. Then we have the brush called disturb. Disturb works in a kind of similar way. It kind of breaks up the paint that you put down. Now, you may like that, but if you don't want to remove all, let's just reset it. If you don't want to remove all the paint you've got there, then I'd say use it sparingly. But it is a fun brush, particularly in its larger size, where you can kind of get this interesting look. It doesn't, like I said, I just tried to pick a color there. It doesn't really put down color. It just plays with the color that's there. So you can get some interesting patterns from this brush. Okay, it really breaks it up. So that's disturb. The next one is called gentle stir. The way the gentle stir works, if you haven't already guessed, is that depending on the motion, so this moves or it stirs left to right. Okay, so it will always stir left to right, even if, if I want to do right to left, it still stirs, but it's not the same. Okay, the real stir pattern is left to right, but you can get some interesting stir patterns here. Gold leaf. Now, gold leaf is a small brush. Even its default, it works on color variability, and it leaves a raised line. So it's not really my favorite brush, I have to say, because it leaves a mark there. So I'm not going to keep that brush on for now. But you can see, if you wanted to sort of just trail a kind of line, it goes from thin to thick with pressure. That's the pressure you'll get from it. Okay, so we'll leave one of the lines there and we'll remove the rest. So that's gold leaf, and you can always calibrate these brushes and play with the paper. Grainy pour is one of my favorite brushes. I'm going to go to a red color. So grainy pour leaves a really nice, I don't even know how to describe it, but a very rich layer of paint here. Puts down some really nice paint. In fact, it's kind of textury. If I make this a bit bigger, it's kind of textury, and it uses a bit of color variability as well. Okay, so if I touch that now, you can see it's using the front color here. Okay, so you can get some nice tinted effects. I've used this for abstracts. This is very nice for abstracts. You can just dab with this brush. If you dab, you get an even better brush stroke. Okay, so I'm just dabbing here. And I will just see what you could just check with the reset down where it blends. It will take the last brush you've used. If I make the reset 0 as opposed to putting down paint, it doesn't blend as much as you would think, but it does blend. The only thing you have to be careful of is that it's blending with the last color you've used. Okay, so I don't think that it's a true, I wouldn't call it a true blender brush, but you can always change it, and it actually picks up some grain as well. Okay, so this one is Grainy Pour. This is a favorite of mine. I don't use these brushes often, but when I do, I always remember that they are a lot of fun. So I would say this is a really nice abstract brush in the alcohol ink group. The next one is called Ink Drop. So Ink Drop is a very interesting brush. It simulates drops of ink or drops of paint, and it kind of, if you keep on, if I keep on this this stroke that I'm making, it builds up the paint. Okay, so you can see what it's doing here. It builds up the paint and then it starts using the second color. Alright, and it will actually go on doing that. If I want to blend it, in fact, that was at a reset of, that was a certain reset. At full saturation, it won't use the second color as much. Okay, use it a bit actually. Let's put another color here. So it's got a little bit darker. So you could use this for adding interesting, I don't know, water shapes or bubbles. It is a very interesting brush. Okay, so that's Ink Drop. Oil Splatter. I really like Oil Splatter actually. This is a nice brush. I'll just reset it because they act quite differently. And I'm going to sort of pick from the colours I've got. So Oil Splat is basically a brush that leaves some splats. Okay? So I'm just tapping. You don't need to, if you drag, this is what you get. If I drag my art pen, that's what I get. Again, good for abstracts, I would say. But be careful because it can get a little bit muddy with your splats. But nice abstracts. I would use this for putting dots or paint splats on my work afterwards. Okay, I'm using Alt to sample the color, so you can see I've got splats there. Okay, so the next brush is, so that's oil spatter, that one. So Pour Grainy. Let's see if we can use a blue-green one. So Pour Grainy is, I always need to reset Pour Grainy because this brush is a very interesting brush. Okay, it lays down, let's try this dark color. I'm going to make it bigger because I think it works better at a bigger size. Ooh. And the bigger size comes up very big. So, yeah, okay. Once it gets going, it's actually interesting, but it can take a while to kind of get the right settings for this brush. But you can use this brush for, I try and use this blue. So I'm just circling, making a circling motion with this brush, and you can see it plays a bit with the paint that's there, but it really kind of stirs the paint. All right. So again, I think this kind of calls itself to an abstract, maybe an abstract landscape, or if you want to do water with perhaps some waves or something like that. But for alcohol ink, they're very kind of abstract brushes anyway. I wouldn't really use them for realistic painting per se. They would be to create shape and texture and that kind of thing. Okay, so that one is Pour Grainy. That is one to try. Pour is another nice brush. Actually, let's reset it. And it works very nicely if you just play with it. This is what I will call one of the kind of perhaps a truer alcohol ink brushes. I'm using it at a smaller size here. If I make it bigger, it's a reset of 100. Let's move this. Ooh, gosh. Let's see what happens if we have a really big brush. So you want to watch if you're using a very, very big brush at 400 odd. I'm trying to look for something that's a little bit more controllable. So this is what you need to see how pour works. This is actually one of the pouring brushes, which is very, very nice. Very nice for abstracts. Okay, you can. I actually love the effects of this brush. You can get some really nice effects. All right, so that is pour. It's a nice brush. Ribbon pour. So we're into the real pour brushes now. See what ribbon pour does, and I'll just reset it. Ribbon pour. Again, a very nice pouring brush. I will make it. These brushes come up a bit small, but if you make them large, the effect is very, very different. So see how different this is at the larger size. Very different. Okay, so you want to make like long. So let's sample that, long sweeping strokes with this brush. And it kind of goes into the paint. So again, if I make it a smaller brush, I start at the edge, you get a very thin line. I think it's actually nicer at the larger size. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can always start large and make it small. Okay, so that's a fairly large brush. And there you are again. Okay, and that reset is 55. If I make it 100, just see what happens. So you still get this. Okay, so you can have fun with that. All right, let's just reset that. So that's ribbon pour. Slow pour. Let's see. Have we got a color we haven't used yet? No. Let's have a look. Slow pour is also a really, really nice brush. It's a pouring brush. Now let's see if we can have some fun changing the papers here. Sometimes they do affect what the outcome is, but so with this brush, it's not a very big brush, so let's try it at a bigger size. Just for demo's purposes, try it at a bigger size. It then starts picking up the paint in a sort of flowy way. It's kind of nice. So, is it a reset? Oh, the reset there is 0. I was wondering why it wasn't picking up the color. Okay, so let's just try. Add in the red that I just added. It actually pulls the paint. Okay, so you can play with this brush. Depending on the setting, it has a different outcome. So I have it a reset of 100 there. All right. So this is more of a blend-in one that actually plays with the color that you've got down. So you can get some depth then, play with that. Okay. Alright, that's slow pour. Splat. Splat, I believe. Oh, and there you can see the diffusion. I'm glad I stuck with that. I think the diffusion is a bit wet, a bit too much there. So it needs to be fairly big. It needs to get going. It's better on a dark color. Okay, I would actually turn the diffusion down unless you really want it to spread out. I would make sure the diffusion is fairly low. Alright, with this one. It's kind of an inky brush, and I've got it on a new layer. Okay? The next brush is Stir. So, if I'm correct, so this brush called Stir is an interesting one. So I started on the layer above where I had worked with, actually I started on layer 2 where I was working with splat, and if I do that you'll see not much happens. But if I go to layer 1 where I have paint, there you will see a very different outcome with the brush strokes. Okay, so if I turn off this top one for a moment, this is what Stir does. Literally, its name. It's stirring in the opposite direction of the brush earlier, which was the earlier brush, I think, was Gentle Stir. So it just stirs it in the opposite direction. Alright, so you could put paint down, and then you could, this is at opacity of 50%. This is fairly standard at its default, so you could just stir in the colours or the paint that you have down. It's not a big brush, and if you want to stir in the opposite direction, you'd go to the other brush, and this one is going right to left. Let's get it right. Okay, so that is Stir. Thick Pour. Thick Pour is a very nice brush. I really like this brush. It's like there are sort of 3 or 4 brushes I really love in this set, but you can see Thick Pour will probably be at the top of my list in as much as it being a real kind of alcohol ink type brush. Okay. So it's got this kind of a little bit of color variability in it. It has a really lovely flow with it. Let's do this. See, this is very, very, very nice. You could make sort of like landscapes. This is the one I would say that I really recall as being a very nice alcohol ink type brush. Okay, so that's Thick Pour. I'm going to mark that as a favourite. And then Texture Pour. This is another one that I like. Lots of colour variability with this one. Let's reset it. I haven't reset for a while. This is something that adds a lot of nice sort of texture to your work. It's funny that these brushes are at the end, because I probably would have started with these brushes. They make it a lot more interesting. Some of the brushes are not that much fun. Most of them are fun, but you can see with this one it plays with color variability quite well. That's a fairly large size, and if you press really hard, you can get this like a patching kind of. Where's the size gone? 360. Okay, this is it small, and then if I make it big, this is it being big or a larger size. Okay, so you could make some nice abstracts with this, and if you turn the reset down, for example, it just you could just blend those colors a little bit. That's what it does. This is a nice brush. Very nice abstract kind of effect for this one. I mean, use it with care, and you really need to experiment with these brushes, but I like the abstract feel of these last few brushes, especially this one. Okay, so Texture Pour is the last of the brushes. It's a very, very nice brush. So you can have a lot of fun with these brushes. They're pretty good if you want to just play with them and master them. You can have a lot of fun with them. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and perhaps I will see you in another video. Take care. Bye bye.